Enjoy a seat at the table and good company, where great conversations and meaningful discussions happen.
Welcome to And Good Company. I'm Sarah Fiedelholtz. We all know that a great dinner party isn't really about the food. It's about the people seated around the table engaging in lively discussions. And Good Company gives you a seat at the table to enjoy smart and engaging conversations as they happen. I am pleased to be in the company of Pastor Lewis King of the Northeast Indiana Neighborhood Engagement. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
So you really have a very interesting story of how you came to become a pastor. And so you started as a barber now, and with King's Barber Shop. Do you still have the barber shop, or was that just the path that set you on where you are now?
Well, it was the on-ramp that the Lord has taken me to enter into ministry and to the things that I do. You know, it was just a vehicle that He used.
And do you still cut hair or no?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't have time.
So explain how cutting people's hair and trimming beards sort of put you on this path and then change your focus to wanting to become a pastor.
Well, it was interesting. Early on, I never was a person that would have come to the table for this conversation. And
why is that?
Because of, being able to talk to people, the engagement, you do this and this is something natural, but it wasn't at the time for me. So it was like the Lord had placed me and given me this podium, so to speak, where I would engage every person that would come into the barber shop. I got a chance to learn about them, their needs, likes, what they wanted in life, their dreams. And so as I began to enter into this profession, it was that I was giving them a haircut, but the Lord was actually the potter shaping me into the man that He wanted me to be. So as I was doing that, I was learning, my place. I had a voice and an opportunity to be able to find a platform where I can engage people just like the table today, and to use that to launch this ministry. So to speak.
But don't you think that, you always think, first of all, when somebody is in the chair of the barber or the hairdresser, there's a lot of intimate and and important conversation that there is that intimacy, and also the idea that it's certainly true with like beauty parlors and salons as a gathering place for women, where a lot of grassroots conversations and discussions happen. And I would think that would be true still today for barbershops, that it is sort of a gathering place where people share topics, ideas, initiatives. So do you think that that's still true today, the importance of these barbershops and, well, not because of COVID, but obviously that the role that they play within the communities?
The barbershop is the cornerstone to the community. It is where everybody meets on the same level. I don't care where you come from. You could be have a high-powered job. You can be a person that lives there, to the little child on the street. They all come in and sit in the same chair. And so it is definitely very powerful as we are engaging in the barbershop learning. I think that, we talk about education. I think there's an education that you receive from the barbershop. There's some school of hard knocks. There's lessons that you learn from other men, other women that bring their children in. And it's just a place that people can call home, and they're relaxed at doing.
But because it's such a grassroots and really entrenched in a neighborhood, and why would you feel that once you found the calling to really help and go beyond just cutting people's hair, why wouldn't you want to continue it there? Why did you feel this need to go out to create a bigger platform?
Well, I believe that when you go into another area, I believe the Lord enlarges your territory. If I go back to the beginning, barbershop was really not in my focus. It started with a dream. It was a dream that I had about going to barber school. I was actually headed to Atlanta to DeVry for business. And so when that week I was going to go, I had this dream about going to barber school. And in the dream, it said that if I would go, that He would lay out my path or chart my path for me. So it was out of obedience that I went to barber school, came back, and I worked in that same area that I started my own barber shop, right across the street actually. I worked with an older gentleman, and I got a chance to learn the tricks of the trade from an older mentor. I got to meet a lot of people. It was the place that I found myself, and it was almost like he said, this is the place for you to learn. This is my training ground. But the barber shop was so important for me because I got to meet people from all over. They trusted me. It was a place that we built relationships, and it was one that was very important for my life because it was one that I'll never forget. You know, I cut occasionally, but it's not for living or anything like that, because I love the relationships and I love the conversations and I love what people share, you know, what I'm able to gain and also pour back into them.
And so so tell me the process of how you went and used the barber shop, and what was the path that you went along?
I began asking people the question, what can we do to make a difference in Fort Wayne? What can we do to create change? And I noticed that as I would ask this question each day, you would see this conversation go back and forth, people with their ideas and thoughts of what should happen.
And what kinds of things? And this was what, 11 years ago, is that correct?
Well, I've been doing it almost 30 years.
30 years,
So,
okay.
yes.
When did you have the barber shop?
I had it in, I started in 98.
Okay,
at the
but
barber.
Northeast Indiana, we'll get to that, the neighborhood is right?
Right.
Okay, so, all right, so what were some of the things that they were saying and the issues that they were saying we needed to change?
You know, they wanted the look of our neighborhoods to change. They wanted people to be able to hear their voice. They needed resources in the area. They wanted a place that they can really feel good, that they can call home. You know, they lived there, but they thought that they were forgotten.
Okay, and this was in 1996?
That was 98.
98,
Yeah,
okay.
around that period of time.
And how many years did you have the barber shop?
I was actually in 2 locations.
Okay.
And so I started mine in 98. Prior to that, I was 94 when I started into the industry of hair.
Okay.
And so in that 4 years, under a mentor that launched mine in 98, and it, you know, the conversations, I was really trying to stir up, you know, what could we do? And it was at that moment, the Lord said, you're asking people about what can they do or what did they want to see? And the question became personal for me.
Which was?
It was, what are you going to do?
Okay.
What are you going to do to create change?
So were you always very guided by your faith and religion?
Yes, my parents were definitely deeply rooted in faith. We prayed together.
So it's always been your guiding light. Okay.
Always been a guiding light.
And you feel that God has always come to you in these times. So
Absolutely.
So God came to you and said, Mr. King, at that time, what are you going to do? And so then what perspired? I
remember a particular moment in the barber shop where we started gathering food, you know, and I had a customer that came into the shop, and I said, I have something really tugging at me. You know, I need to do something. I don't know quite what it is, but I think it has something to do with food. And as I began to tell him what the Lord had showed me, he began to cry. And he says, I'll call you tonight. And I said, oh, okay. And I just completed the haircut. He called me back. Him and his wife said they wanted to assist financially to help start the feeding right out of the barber shop. And I was like, okay. They was like, well, you just do it. You know, if the Lord gave it to you, he'll definitely instruct you and show you how to do it. So we began doing that along with Bible studies, and, you know, began to give coats and clothes and creating a space right in the barber shop. And then when did you go to seminary? I went to the seminary. Actually, after over 25 years, I ended up saying, you know, what do you want me to do while we're doing all of these things out of the barber shop? And my son was going to Holy Cross, and ran across Pastor Marino and Pastor Alsmeyer, and they heard about what I was doing in the barber shop. And they said, "You want to go to school?" I said, "Well, yeah, I would like to go to school. I don't, know how I'm gonna do that." At the time, I was raising my son. I was a single parent at that particular time, and I didn't know quite how I was gonna make the transition. But talking to them, talking to the seminary, went there, and the Lord just opened doors that no man could shut, and it was just a walk of faith. By me going to the seminary, and just a blessing to my life, and allowed me to be able to go through it and to be able to do the work that I'm doing today.
And you didn't feel that you could use like the barbershop and like a network of barbershops and to build because that's really the heart of the community. So you didn't feel that you could do it that way?
I believe that I could, and there's still different things that the Lord is stirring up in me with the barbershop, because I know how important it was.
Right.
When I was doing ministry out of the barbershop, a lot of the places that were around me weren't thinking about using their businesses or their barbershops as a place of worship or outreach. And so, I believe that, some of them have later come on to do that, which I'm so thankful, because they understand that when we are a convener and we are bringing people and we create a space for people to feel comfortable, it is an opportunity for us to use those spaces in a positive manner. So I'm glad to see that, and there's some things to come, I believe, with still.
And so you're the pastor of United Beth.
No, I'm at Holy Cross.
Okay.
Holy Cross is an urban outreach pastor.
Okay.
And so what may be confusing to some, I preach at Holy Cross, because I'm the urban outreach pastor, but I also preach out of Bethlehem on South Anthony. And so I have a space in Bethlehem. I preach there on Sundays. I preach at Holy Cross. Because Holy Cross's engagement through urban outreach is through the work that I've been doing.
And so let's talk about your work with urban outreach. So did you take a lot of the ideas or beliefs of the power of the grassroots barbershop into your outreach work?
All of it.
So how did that translate?
All of it was basically the foundation that the Lord has given me. It was based on food, it was based on friendships, and it was based on faith. And so all of those opportunities that we were able to fuse together to create relationships, it was something that I started right there in the barbershop. I had a small group of people. We began to do weddings. We had baptisms and everything in the barbershop. And so all of it started there. So as I go to Holy Cross and I venture out and do a lot of larger outreach out in Bethlehem, everything was started right from the barbershop.
So let's talk about the Northeast Indiana Neighborhood Engagement Program and what that is and what you do there. Northeast Indiana Neighborhood Engagement is an organization. It's a plot of land where there's 9 Lutheran churches that sit in that area. And is Holy Cross one of those?
Holy Cross is on the outside, but they're in there because of me. We put churches even on the outside perimeter, but we look at a mission field. The mission field, we have 9 churches.
And where is this mission field
locally? The mission field is Anthony, all the way down to Paulding. We go all the way to Calhoun, and then we got Washington. So it's a rather large one to encompass the churches.
And there are 9 churches.
9 churches in there. And so even outside.
So that's how you came up with 9.
9, correct.
That's the abbreviation.
And so the perimeter area, we have churches that are outside of those boundaries that look at this particular area, as a mission field. And so right now I galvanize people through the work that I do to come in and serve together. And have opportunities to.
And are these churches all different? Are they Lutheran, Baptist? I mean, are they all different denominations?
Yes.
And so how did you get them all to come together in this mission field? Like, how did you get them all to play in that sandbox?
Well, I didn't do it. It was the Lord's doing. He created the means to do it.
But how did you execute it?
Because people's hearts, they wanna help. They wanna serve, and they wanna come together. And sometimes we have barriers that we have within ourselves that limit who we can work with, who we can play with, or who we can engage with. But when you're talking about helping those that are in need, you know, I don't care where you sit, you know, when your heart is pulled.
So what was it like? So what did you do? Did you call up all the pastors and priests and say, okay, I want to have a meeting? I mean, how did you sort of get them to come together and create this plan?
Through conversations, you know, trying to find out exactly what they want, let them know that I have an opportunity for you to be able to get your congregation involved. And with that, they said yes. You know, I have some people that wanted to. Sometimes you may not get the whole congregation, you may get 5 or 6, but then out of that, they'll go back, they report the experience that they've had, and through that, it in turn, you know, creates this relationship with the church that will, in turn, you know, come alongside whatever we're doing.
So give me some examples of what 9 has done.
9 has with the body, they have actually provided through their churches volunteers.
Okay.
We've had schools that have come together to put together bags that we actually hand out in the community, and they just basically have been a convener. We talk because of the areas being so big to find out what is actually going on in each area. You know, are there any assets that are in the community, any organizations that you can partner with to create opportunities that we can really make impact and create different types of programs. So each church, you know, wherever they sit, they have their own idea what they want to do. Some are working with housing, some are working and partnering with schools, some have tutoring programs, you know, and so knowing where we have these churches in this mission field, we can be able to send somebody over there to say, well, we have a tutor over here, we know a church over here.
So it's sort of like, so that not each church is duplicating everybody's efforts, and you're sort of, you know, it's, you know, you focus on this, you focus on this, and that. So it's by that.
Absolutely.
And so, how has that been more important, and how has that changed over the past year?
Well, I think with COVID, everything has changed. I mean, everything that we thought we knew, we've had to change it. And so, you know, through just collaborative work, you know, everybody found that there were some weaknesses in how they were comfortable before that they've had to change. And so, partnering with the 10-Point Coalition, you know, they have been definitely a catalyst that we partner with, along with other churches and organizations, to do feeding programs that were able to feed a lot of people during the time, creating drive-through opportunities for them to be able to meet that need that was definitely there. And so people were trying to figure out, what can we do? Well, the immediate need was food. Kids are at home, families are struggling, businesses were shut down, and there was a hardship. And so galvanizing that in relationship with Fort Wayne United and 10-Point Coalition has just been, you know, amazing.
And you talk about this idea of strategic ministry. What is that?
Well, it's ministry beyond the 4 walls. You know, when we do ministry well, when it's organized inside of the church, we know exactly what to do, what to say. But, you know, when you take a pastor or take a congregation and you actually are working within the community, you have to hear from the community. They tell you what their hurts are, they tell you where their needs are, and it's nothing that you can say, well, we know exactly what's happening. You have to actually engage the community in the neighborhood in which you're working in.
And don't you think that, I mean, there's a big issue that all religions and all organized religions are facing, is that, you know, you're not seeing young people coming through the doors. So, and especially like with the 10-Point Coalition and Fort Wayne United, that's a lot about sort of meeting young African-American men where they are. How has this fact of, with your use of strategic ministry and knowing that they're not coming in to hear you, how has that changed what you do? I mean, that's why I was wondering if then it would want you to go back to sort of where they are, which is in the barber shops or hanging out on the basketball courts, or because they're not coming in. So how has that changed, or what are you doing to address that kind of issue?
Well, there again, a lot of my ministry was on the sidewalk, and it's still on the sidewalk. You know, that's why I preach at Holy Cross. I preach at Bethlehem, but I'm also on the street corners. And that's where I usually pull a lot of the people together. You know, parking lot ministry and things like that. You know, I'm not going to be a contained follower of Christ. And so doing it, you have to go where they are. You know, you have to meet the youth in the streets. You have to be there walking alongside those that are out beyond the four walls. And so they're not going to come into the building. They're not going to know what to say. And sometimes they look at us, you know, in church and say, well, you know, why don't you come out here and meet us where we are? Because Jesus did.
Right.
And so, yeah, the barbershop is still relevant to me. It's just that in order for the type of ministry and the collaboration, you had to kind of step out of the four walls of that building and really be out there and bringing resources in other organizations, because one of the greatest gifts that, you know, I can see in this type of ministry is knowing where your strength is, and I know where mine is, and we pulling that together to make a difference and an impact in the community. If I think that I have it all, then I've lost already.
Right. And what do you think about the idea that a lot of the issues and things that you are addressing, you know, equity in education, or having, you know, enough to eat, or a roof over your head, and job opportunities. I mean, a lot of these things are initiatives and programs that city government should be involved in and taking responsibility for. And why is it that you think that so many of these needs are being met by religious organizations? You know, like the majority of the homeless. I mean, the city does not have like a homeless department. It's the ministries or churches or the organizations that faith-based organizations that provide services or coats and food pantries and stuff. Why do you think that is, and is that a good thing?
Well, I think that, the faith base should do it. They should do it, but I also believe that the city is doing it as well. Fort Wayne United is definitely doing all of those things. When they have men and women that walk the streets. That is the discipleship program. It may not be a city term, but it's discipleship at its best. Being able to meet people right out on the road where they are. They do that. Finding out that they did housing projects, feeding programs in the park. All of those things to provide. They come along as partners, which is still the city, coming along with partnerships and providing toys and different collaborative opportunities that still bring in the church if the church would want to open the doors. And those are two areas that we often say they don't mix. But when you're talking about saving souls,
But what about the idea that you're very faith-based and you believe very much in your religion and practice, but I'm sure that there are a lot of people when you meet them that they are like, well, what has he done for me, and he hasn't helped me, and they're not necessarily, and they're not so inclined to want to be, engaged in that way. How do you address those kinds of issues? That they're not, they don't want to, they don't believe, maybe they don't practice, they don't believe in God, or they're not, they're not associated or go to church, or how do you deal with those kinds of issues, or is it separate from the idea of, getting people to join the ministry and practice and live a servant's life versus helping them meet them where they are? Or do you see those as two separate roles, or do you see them immediately intertwined? Or
well, for me, as being a pastor, as I stated before, for me is food, is friendship, and faith.
Okay.
Food is the means that we gather. Friendships and relationships are what we establish that lead to trust. And faith, we'll get there, because by relationship with me, you'll know who I serve, you'll know what I believe, and you'll be able to see who I am and not have to hear it. So it's not the approach that you have to come into the building.
Okay.
Just being in relationship, you ought to know that he's here.
And I don't want to say how you measure your success, because it's not about success in the sense of achievement, but how do you measure if you've made an impact, I guess, or made a difference?
And that's interesting in terms of ministry. Ministry, you know, people, they talk about quantifying numbers, bringing those together. You know, for me, if I can touch one person, I've made a difference. You know, I know when you look at it in larger scales in corporate America, there's a lot of data in order to back up grants and things like that. But for me, to put a smile on their face, to meet the needs that are there in the community, you won. One person, if you've impacted their life, you made a big difference.
And how have you seen that bringing, you know, you talked about that with these 9 churches, that everybody was sort of gifted in their lanes. But when you merge, you have a highway, and then we're all going in the same direction. So how have you seen over your time, because it's 11 years with the Northeast Indiana Neighborhood Engagement, how have you seen what these 9 churches do and the services that they offer? How has that changed and evolved during these 11 years?
Well, I mean, they had to learn the process.
Okay.
You know.
Well, hopefully by now they've learned the process.
They've had to learn the process. You know, going out beyond the 4 walls is not really easy. For churches that expect for people to come in. And so doing that, you know, we've learned that there are people in the community, in their churches, that want to go out and serve. So like I said, it's not the whole church.
But how have they also, the volunteers, but how have you sort of divide and conquered the issues? Or, you know, is there, like have certain churches own certain issues like the tutoring or the food pantry? And,
they created a building. We got one particular that created a building. They got tutoring in there, and they have tutors there on a regular basis. They go out and we promoted that. Like I said, there's another church that does housing. You know, they go after 10, 12 houses a year, and they go in and they work with the families. So they have come to make the impact in the areas that they are. But even with those same families with the houses that we know that may need tutoring, we're able to collaborate to work together. So they have definitely improved over time. It was just trying to get the churches to say, yes, this is what I want to do. And you find that there are a few that say, okay, I want to do this. I want to try this. And it's been something that has grown over the years.
Okay, so through the work with the neighborhood engagement and through your work as the urban outreach, what are things that we need to be doing in our neighborhoods and communities?
Well, one of the things I think you need to deal with some of your strengths that are already there.
Okay.
The strengths that are already there, organizations, and we need to do a lot more communicating to find out where those gaps are.
Okay, and what do you see in your work? And you're out there, I mean, you're on the street, boots on the street, you're walking with the 10-point coalition, you're in the neighborhoods, you're you know, on the sidewalks. What do you see are the issues? What are we not communicating, or what are we not doing that we need to be doing or should be doing?
What I've learned from the barbershop, what I've learned from 10-point coalition, and what I learned with 9 is that we need to talk to the community more one-on-one. To do more assessment with them to find out exactly where they are, what the needs are, and then to be able to hear from them where the gaps are. Oftentimes we perceive where the gaps are, and sometimes we miss it.
So what are you hearing are the gaps?
Well, one of the things is, you know, just services in the community. Being able to have services that they don't have to go to another side of town. To be able to have a neighborhood, and when I say neighborhood, that looks like something that they can be proud of. When you look at the alleys, ways, you look at street corners, you look at how things are overgrown and stuff like that. When you clean that up, you make a difference. When the lighting is there, you make a difference.
Okay, so let's start. Okay, and so you've got also this group of volunteers, and so is that one of the things you go out and do and create initiatives on a grassroots level to clean up the, you know, mow the grass, clean up the garbage or sidewalks, and then do you also then work to bring attention to city departments to come and fix things? And
and a lot of that work is done through the 10-point coalition. You know, when they're out, we collaborate. And one of the beauties of working with the 10-point coalition, you know, overseeing that walking the streets, is that we use our churches. Churches come in with volunteers, and they want to come in and help.
Okay.
We often talk about mission work, and we think about it being overseas, but the greatest mission field is right here, right in your own backyard.
Okay.
And so they come out, we clean up, they pick up trash, they do things like that to help improve the neighborhoods. And one of the things that I've noticed, walking with them, picking up trash, doing all that, it's all ministry, but what I love about it is that people, they come up to you and say thank you. And then before you know it, what can I do to join you? When you start letting people know that you care about them, it makes a big difference at what you'll get back from them.
And what about, especially in the last year, and some of the issues that particularly African American men think about, mental health issues? I mean, that's clearly across the board, but how are you sort of addressing that within your, we're going to talk about your ministry field. And how do you approach that and get that to be a topic that people will talk about, or or what are you doing to address those needs?
The mental health is a big issue. Oftentimes we read about what happens and we say, wow, that's bad. But you have to get to the root cause. There's a lot of trauma that goes on in the community, definitely in the African American community. There's a lot of loss. There are a lot of things that are, financially, single parent homes where children are growing up, not even seeing the male role models. And all of that plays a part in how they even grow up and live and how they process. And so the mental health aspect is very important, and to overlook what they are going through inside, from children on up to men, and expect for them to just have it because you may think you have it, is wrong. And so taking that time to get to know them through relationship, hearing where those roadblocks are, helping them to kind of remove some of the roadblocks, and then too, connecting them with people that they can talk to. That's very important. When they are able to release and to be able to talk about it and then process through what has happened to them. Trauma is, you can't forget it. It's like going into a cave. You got to deal with where you went in the cave.
Right, because even if you push it down, it's going to manifest itself somewhere else.
And it does. And sometimes you talk about anger. Well, why are they angry? What happened? How long have they been this way? And if you have been in a situation where you haven't had certain resources, he went out and stole some. Well, why? Why are they doing what, and behaving or operating in a certain way? We have had, a lot thrown on the African American male, and it's not been good, but we have not dealt with why are they responding and handling things.
So let's sort of deal with that here. What is it? Why? What is it that we're not doing or we're not providing for African American men? And you also talk about the importance of you focus a lot on kids because they don't choose the.
They don't.
Right. So, but what is it that we as the community need to give them to help them? What is it that you're hearing that they want and need and feel that they can't get?
Love. And that starts at home. And if you look at where a lot of the children are coming from some broken situations, situations that they don't know how to deal with, from a parental standpoint, I'm not going to say that the parents are bad. They just don't know sometimes.
Right.
They don't have the resources to be able to, get out and navigate. So that situation is definitely weighted.
So how do you use your role what do you do in those, how do you implement to help them in those situations?
Well, first I listen.
Okay.
When you listen to them, you find out what's wrong, and then we connect connect them to the resources.
So do you think that's a big issue? Because I find that people, one, they don't know what resources are out there, but two, they may not also either have the wherewithal or the technology or the capabilities to navigate the system to get those resources?
I believe that is a big part, but also walking alongside them while they are in the process.
Okay.
You know, it's one thing to say, go over here and do this and do that,
right.
and why haven't you done this and
right.
that? But sometimes you have to walk alongside them and encourage them and have to be there and be that accountability for them.
So is it a lot of that you have to show up? You?
Yeah, yeah, personally. Yeah, absolutely. You know, if I don't show up, I can't get anybody else to do what I do. If I don't show up with them and to walk alongside them and show them how to do it, they won't know that I care. You know, it's like a top-down approach. This is what you need to do. No, it's from the grassroots level. It's through relationship that these things are established, trust, and we need.
Is that the cornerstone? Trust?
It is.
And do you think that because we've had a lot of issues, obviously, with the police and relationships, and do you think that there is this tremendous lack of trust?
I think it's a tremendous lack. I mean, the trust is a factor that we have to establish.
And how do we rebuild that?
Through relationships.
Okay.
It's through getting to know. It's through getting to know the people in the neighborhood. You have to convene them.
Okay.
You have to listen to some hard things. You have to understand where they're coming from. I think one of the lenses that we should use is empathy. If you could see it from their side and understand why they're responding and saying these things, and not approach it from a defensive standpoint, we can get farther ahead.
So have we been successful at that? Have you been, I mean, I know you're very involved with United Front, which is the organization to help educate and engage people with the biases, and to look at sort of breaking down some of the boundaries of some of the institutionalized racism and thinking and things like that. But, so that's more of in an academic setting, you know, learning. But what are you doing to make this happen? Like, you know, get people to listen, or go on a listening tour, or bring the two groups together. I mean, how do you use your skills to, you know, bring different people, you know, like the police or an African American together, or you know, what are you doing on those fronts?
Well, United Front is definitely the initiative that is bringing this whole city together.
Okay.
I was in a meeting last night talking with schools that is talking about engaging in United Front and what can we do, because it changes the culture.
Okay.
One of the things that I noticed about United Front, it challenges your structure. And some people on the outside, they look at it and say, well, you're dealing with just people that are up here. It filters down.
Okay.
You know, people that work in organizations, work in companies, that they have the different role specific areas that they're dealing with. It touches this community in so many ways, and it changes some of the things that we have inside us.
Okay.
And so it allows you to start seeing people differently.
Okay.
Start understanding. What I like about Dr. Lasambe is that he doesn't use the black and white. He doesn't use those boundaries or barriers.
Right.
He talks about humanity, talks about the love that we should have to create a peaceful space and place that we all can live.
Okay, but do you think, I mean, because, again, going back to where you started, in the barbershop and the grassroots, that it bubbles up. So don't you think that instead of this trickling down, it needs to sort of rise from the, you know, from the grassroots? So,
from me being a pastor, it does.
Okay.
Through the work that I do. And
I'm
pretty sure that there are other people that are taking this and they're applying it to the grassroots level. It's not all up top.
So when you're out and you're listening, and an African American male says to you, well, you know, they make it hard, or, you know, it's they, you know, they're not giving me a chance, and they, you know, how do you respond to that? How do you get them to also think about their thinking or responsibility, or getting, you know, the engagement from them? Because in some ways it also it has to start from themselves want to change or make improvement. I mean, this is for anybody, right?
Right.
So how do you sort of, because you hear it. I mean, you hear the biases on both sides, you know?
Absolutely.
So what do you do? What's your approach to challenging that or getting them to think differently or?
Creating a relationship with them. Because it's not done you can't do it in the first conversation.
Right.
You have to be a seed planter. You know, I'm big on sowing seeds.
Okay.
And so it's through living a life that they know that if they come to me, they can trust. And it's through establishing that relationship. But what I would find out from them is where they're at.
Okay.
You know, what brought that statement about?
Okay.
What are you doing now? What were some of the things that you felt that were hindering you? Okay, what can we do to help? Is it a job? You know, is it a way that we can connect you with a job? I know Temple and Coalition has connected people with jobs, so I have access to send them to you know, a company. You know, do you need a counselor? Well, we have counselors that you can. So it's being this resource.
So are you more like a bridge?
A bridge builder.
Okay.
You know, and that's how I actually refer to myself, as a bridge builder.
Okay. And so you're building this bridge, and from what you hear, what is the community, what are we doing right, and what could we be doing better?
Well, I think that we are creating spaces of conversation now.
Okay. But don't you think we also need action, right?
And I believe that we are doing that.
So what kinds of action should we take? What other things could we do? How could we be better?
Well, I think that if we create opportunities for us to start after we've heard and we had this dialogue, because one of the things I found that people don't want to get in that uncomfortable space. I don't care if it's over here. Once we get in the uncomfortable space, and to find out exactly what our needs are, what can we, then we start putting programs together that would actually start meeting.
But don't you think there's also a fear? I mean, I find that everybody is so worried that they're going to say the wrong thing, or that they ask this question that, you know, somebody's going to take it the wrong way, or they're going to accuse me of being a racist. Or, so how do we have these conversations or create this space where, you know, people can ask questions or, you know, talk about their perceptions or biases, and, you know, to say, you know, some people will say for African American men, and, you know, that they are obviously, you know, number one in terms of incarceration, and yes, you know, there are lots of issues and flaws with the judicial system, but a lot of people will say, well, they made the choices. This is what they chose to do with their lives, you know. There's like self-determination ideas. And so how do you, and then if they said that, you know, then they could be, you know, a lot of people would jump down their throats, especially now because of social media, that the minute you say anything, you know, you could get everybody to hate you. And how do you deal with this? How do you create this and make it so that you can have these meaningful conversations? Because a lot of people think things that they don't necessarily say. And so let's take this issue of, you know, that some people would say that, well, they made their choice, you know, they made their bed. How do you respond to that?
I get that.
Okay.
People say that. I've heard it.
Okay. So then how do you respond and get them to understand or think differently about how they perceive the situation?
Well, it's not really getting them differently, because I'm going to be honest with you, it's still one-sided.
Okay.
Because it's like, when you talk about how they feel and that they have to walk on eggshells, they don't look at it from the standpoint of the African-American male or woman that has to code switch to exist.
Okay.
Code switch to exist is just as damaging to the African-American male. In order for me to exist in your world and to be and function and to go to school and to work and live in society and progress, I have to walk and say certain things in order for you to accept me. That if I told you exactly what I felt or what I thought, you would be upset. So it goes both ways.
So we're gonna do a little role playing here.
Right.
So I'm here and I'm saying to you, okay, I want to hear what you say. But what is it? What do they want us to hear? An African American male feel like when I say, well, you know, those are your choices, you know. you have the choice of how you want to live and what you want to do, and what am I going to hear back? Tell me this let's have this conversation.
The conversation is dealing with equality and equity.
Okay.
What they expect for us to be able to do sometimes is just not there. You can't expect, because there's barriers that have to be removed.
Right.
Maybe resources.
And there's so many many issues. So but how do we
getting them to understand that there are barriers that create the differences and opportunities that are not equal.
Okay.
You know, they're not starting out at the same place, but they're expected to end up at the same place.
Okay.
You know, and it's not really, that's not fair. And so I've had conversations with people that, you know, going through what we've been through over the past year, have said, my eyes are open. I never thought of it this way, because there's some biases.
Well, there are biases, but see, I think that what the African American community also needs to understand, they have biases too.
Absolutely.
And they have perceptions that they think that, you know, all white people are going to treat them this way, or, you know, they think that that all white, you know, might be racist, or, which isn't the case. So, but what? So we're going to try to have this dialogue.
Right.
So, how do we start this conversation, and what's the questions we should be asking?
We should be getting down to about how do people really feel? How do you perceive me?
Okay.
How do you perceive me?
Okay.
And I'm gonna tell you, I've had people tell me that I'm not like the other black people.
Right. They might accuse you of being too white, selling out. Right. And there's a lot of, I would say, of the established African American community, of prominent people in our community, that many others in the African American community would say that you're a sellout, you're not too white, you've made too many accommodations. Okay. So what's your response when someone says that to you?
Well, they know where I've come from.
Okay.
I've come from the street.
But so have all these others. So so then what happened? So what do we do? Because it seems to me that we're just everybody's constantly, we get over one hurdle, a roadblock, and we're getting another one.
Right.
So what do you respond when they say that to you? That you're not like us, you don't understand what we're going through?
Well, they know that they can't say that to me, because being in the barbershop, where I've positioned the barbershop, where I've come up, it had a humble beginning. Okay. And it's still humble. Okay. But it definitely was one that came up from the community, knowing and learning people.
So then why do they say that you're not like them? Or not?
Well, no, they don't say that about me. I'm just saying that some people, they would say, no, they don't say that about me. They don't say that about Pastor.
Because you're out there. I mean, but you're also, but a lot of it is keeping your word, showing up. Yes. And you show up day in, day out. Okay. So, but let's say if I have this opportunity. Right. All right. So I have an opportunity to engage with an African American male in Fort Wayne. What are the questions I should be asking so that I can open up a dialogue?
Can you explain to me, you know, what is some roadblocks that you may have in your life right now? What are some ways that I can help you and assist you? I want to hear from you. Okay. And what do you think I'm going to hear from them? I mean, what do you hear? You're going to hear some, we have lack of funds. Okay. We have education struggles with our educational learning, you know, abilities, so to speak. Right. And there's also not equity of the equity teachers, and, you know. Okay. Some may have single, you know, like I said, single parents. Right. Some of the children, the trauma because they've lost people to gun violence. Right. You know, growing up in an area that they don't feel that they can even get out of. System. Well, there's not a sense of hope. I mean, you have to instill hope. Right. Okay. Absolutely. So when you hear these things, you have to say, well, what can I do to assist? And as I stated before, is walk alongside them. Okay. I want to be able to call, to talk. How are you doing? Mm-hmm. So is it sort of like almost like in AA, you have a sponsor, right? Mm-hmm. You have someone that you can call and rely on, and sort of when you get in trouble. Right. So do we need to have, like, I guess it would be mentors and sponsors that, you know, more people out available? I think mentors are important.
Well, and also certainly for you, because it's been mentors or people, because obviously that have helped your path or cleared out the way for you for your path.
Right, and then created a space so that I can talk. They can see me, I can learn and listen. They can help guide. But you don't get to that place if you don't have a relationship or trust. Those that poured into me, if I didn't see value in them, it would have never happened.
So how do we build those kinds of places where we can have trust and within the community where we can bring people of diverse backgrounds together so that they don't feel like it's just a one-off or we're having a round table or something? What is it that we can do? So I mean, I'm asking you. I'm asking you the question. What can I do to help? So is it that I should I go and volunteer at one of the 9 churches versus my own place of worship? Is it that I should, because the 10-point coalition is really for the African American men, but are there mentorships? Is there a way that I could get involved? I'm asking you, what can I'm representing the community, obviously. But what is it? What can I do?
Well, the 10-point coalition is for young African American males, but with that and the church, what I love about them is that it does not prohibit everyone from coming to the table and helping. And so, you have to have the area that you're focused in. But with that, it brings people from north, south, east, and west. But my point is, I
got to find the table.
I create the table.
Okay, so should we be creating almost like, instead of barbershops, but like salons where we bring people together and we create the table, we set it up, like in a park and get people to, I mean, how do we do this?
Well, like past couple weeks, we convened, we pulled churches together. This was collaboratively with the 10-point coalition and with churches.
But that's within the community, I'm talking about, because what they'll say is, it's the south side versus north side and their community. Okay, I'm talking about how do we do it to bring people who aren't normally together or aren't in your fields of ministry. How do we do this? Where do we create these tables and opportunities?
Everywhere. I mean, we have to bring people together.
Right. So how do we do it?
See, the beauty of when we create opportunities, there again, as I was stating, they come from all over. To volunteer. They're not coming because of church. It may be an organization, it may be a neighbor, but they are coming together and talking. And they're engaging. Every opportunity that I put together, one of the first things that comes to mind is, how can I bring different people together to engage that normally wouldn't come together?
So are you doing this, is this intentional? Like, do you do like a salon every month where you invite people, or do you do it like a Sunday meal that everybody sits down? I mean, how are you doing it to bring people together?
Through for one, on Sundays at 2 o'clock. I've been doing it now for over 10 years.
And what is that at 2 o'clock?
We provide a meal and a table for people to
and
talk and engage.
Where is this meal and table happening?
Well, we do it out of Bethlehem.
Okay, so
I started it in the barber shop.
Okay, but is it outside?
It's outside.
Okay, so and you're going to, obviously for COVID.
Yes.
Okay, so you do this you haven't started it. Have you started it back yet?
I haven't started back up.
Okay. So you're going to start.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then, so you're going to set up the tables, and so anybody in the community can come. Anyone in all of Portland.
Anyone can come.
So how do we get the word out that to invite and for people on both sides to feel welcome? Because one of the things that a lot of people feel is that if they go into a neighborhood and they people don't see a lot of people like themselves.
Right.
How do they feel welcome? So how do we make it to get people to come and feel comfortable and participate in this? How do we do that?
The same way you got me here today. You invited me.
Okay.
And it's through that invitation and that's how we invite people. And it's word of mouth.
All right. So when you start the next one.
Right.
So you're going to invite some people, and you will invite me.
I will.
And I will bring other people to this table.
Absolutely.
Because I think we've got to set up the tables, but you're right. We've got to bring people to the table.
Right, absolutely.
And we've got to, even if we have to nag them. But if you're saying that we need to have these conversations, then we need to create this opportunity.
And it happens that way. Just putting the table outside has done
some good food, right?
It always has to start with good food.
It has to start with good food, right?
But yeah, the table, you know, I have many pictures of banquet tables outside where people have come from all over just to sit, conversate, and what we learn and what we gather is information that's valuable.
Okay. Well, obviously we've gathered a lot of valuable information at this table.
Absolutely.
And so at the end of each And Good Company program, I ask guests the same 12 questions that French novelist Marcel Proust popularized from a Victorian parlor game. And he believed that by revealing answering these questions, it will reveal your true nature. What is your favorite word?
Love.
What is your least favorite word?
Hate.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Helping people.
What turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Not helping people.
What sound or noise do you love?
My parents' voice.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Not hearing them.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I love mine.
Okay. What profession would you not like to do?
Oh. I don't know. I probably wouldn't want to sing.
Okay. What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Listening to people.
Who, living or dead, would you most like to have a conversation with?
My father.
Is he still living?
He's deceased.
Okay. How would you like to die?
Knowing that I've done all that I can to help people.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, O good and faithful servant. And that is exactly what I want to hear.
And I believe that this conversation started at this table, but it will not end at this table. And we are going to continue to invite and engage the community to enjoy a seat at a table in a field outside, and we are going to evoke some meaningful dialogue and conversation.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you can learn more about And Good Company and all the other great conversations we have had at andgoodcompany.info. We look forward to next week when we again invite you to enjoy a seat at the table for great conversation and good company. And an addendum to that is we will also invite you to a seat at our table outside in a field for people from all over to get together to continue to have great conversations and good company.